Okay, so the next text we're going to look at have come from the written exercises that we asked candidates to do during the assessment centre. All three of the examples we've got here from candidates who were successful in getting places on one of our schemes this year. They are asked to write a report to the Board of Directors based on a decision that they will have made in a group exercise that happened just before this written exercise, and they have 30 minutes in which to write these reports. So because of the time limit, we don't expect it to be their best writing ever, but we are looking for certain things that they managed to get in there. So the first example is from a candidate who's really done a report style. So one of the things I really like about this is that it is a proper report. They've used a lot of headings and they've used a lot of bullet points, so it's very clear what each of the paragraphs is talking about. It's very easy to navigate your way through, and for the directors that would be good. It's easy for them to find the key information that they need, and for me as a recruiter it's also very good for the same reason. In terms of content, some of the things they've done really well is they've picked up some information from the information that they were given as part of the group exercise, and they've actually used that and created more. So for example, they've taken the costs that were given in the group exercise and in the information they were given, and they've produced the actual costings for the project, which is really good. They've also talked about some of their reasons for selecting stations that they have. So things like why they chose Charing Cross and Oxford Circus was because of the high customer complaints. So they've got a lot of really good information in there. In terms of other really good things about this, one of the things I like is they've used jargon very appropriately. And usually we tell candidates to steer away from any kind of jargon, but in this case they've used the word possessions, and they've used it in the context of closing tube stations in order to do work on them. So it's an appropriate context, they've used the word appropriately, and it shows that they understand the technology and the technical side of what they're coming in for. This candidate did apply for a technical role, so it's really good to see that they've done that. Things that could have improved it, there's only really one thing. The way it finishes, it feels very rushed. It feels almost as if they run out of time. So it would be nice to have just a final finishing off sentence, just to say something along the lines of, in conclusion, our group decided that, or something similar. If we compare that then to text number 2, which was written by a candidate representing a general manager from the Bakerloo line, this has got a very different style to it. It hasn't got any of the bullet pointing or the subheadings that the first example had. However, it is still very well structured. If you read through it, each of the paragraphs does deal with a different subject. So it is very clear and very easy to read through. Again, it's very easy to access the information. Some of the things that they've done that we really liked in terms of content was, similar to the other candidate, they had gone further than the original brief, and in this case they'd gone further with the stakeholders. So they'd mentioned the stakeholders that were given to them originally, but then they've thought about it and they've talked about the ice pack companies, which what they're talking about is the technology providers, and they've understood that they are a key stakeholder and that they need to have some early engagement with that particular group. So that's really good to see. They've gone further than what we expected. In terms of improvements for this written exercise, there's only really a couple of things. Similarly to the last one, it would be nice to have a finishing off statement. Again, it does finish quite abruptly, so it would be nice to have that. In terms of structure, it would be really good to have some subheadings just to help guide the reader through. And the first paragraph is actually one complete sentence, so it's a very long sentence. In terms of reading, that makes it quite difficult to read, and it feels almost as if the candidate has just dumped a load of ideas onto the page, so that needs kind of breaking up. And in a final point, the candidates are asked to produce a project plan, and in this case the candidate has given us a communications plan. The content is still right, but it does give a little hint that perhaps they didn't understand what they were asked to do. So finally, we've got a candidate who was representing an environmental group called Save the Planet. This was actually one of the best candidates we saw this year, this came from. They've kind of done a mixture of both the first and the second one in terms of structure. They've got the paragraphs later on, but right at the top they do a bit of subheading, making it clearer what they mean around the immediate priorities and the next steps. So what I really like about this candidate is they've started off with a nice little introduction. They've told us the decision and why that decision was made. They've then moved on to this really nice clear little section where they're talking about the next steps and the priorities and why those were chosen and what that actually means. And then as they go further forward, they've talked about things that no other candidate really did discuss this year. So similarly to candidate 2, they have identified another stakeholder, and in this case it was the staff working on the stations, so the customer service assistants whose shifts might have to change because of that. So that was a really strong bit of content. In terms of improvement, I mean, similar to the second one, it would be nice to have a few more headings and to have that carried on so that it's even clearer. And similar to the first two as well, again, it does end a little bit abruptly, so it would be nice just to have that finish off, that nice little conclusion at the end.